Welcome back to Walls of Horror. I am horror author Charlie Walls, and today I am doing a book haul. But before I get to it, I do want to give a couple qualifications because I recently did a book haul, and I don't actually do that many book hauls. Usually, whenever I want to read a book or I see a book that I like, I order a book or two online. Whenever I want to read it. The reason for the book hauls is the first one I had stopped in at the GoodWill bookstore, got a lot of great books, and then a week later I wanted to go back because how the GoodWill bookstore operates, it operates under donations, and then the books are donated for free, and then they're sold and the money goes to charity. And so what I posited in my last book haul video was that they had gotten someone's collection of classic science fiction or SF and sword and sorcery paperbacks. So my hope by going back a week later was that some of the stuff was sold and that I would find, and that maybe more of that collection had been put out. I was really excited last time to find this, Swords and Deviltry by Fritz Leiber. So I was hoping I would go back and they would have another one or more Michael Moorcock, or what would be the best to me would be Carl Edward Wagner Kane books. So I went back about a week later, and they had put out some more stuff, but it was really, they had a lot of the type of stuff that I had that I kind of liked, but I didn't love. It was the stuff that I thought would be cool, but that I don't necessarily need. I did have a couple. And I sort of had a stack of maybe books. There were a few Isaac Asimov books. I do have, I don't know, maybe 10 or so Isaac Asimov books. A few Robert Heinlein. There was an older paperback of The Maltese Falcon that I wish I had went ahead and gotten, but I went ahead and put it up. There was, like I said, a few odds and ends. And so as I was walking out to leave, or turn from the mystery and science fiction and fantasy sections toward like the regular paperback section, at the bottom of the aisle, this caught my eye. There was a whole stack of Ian Fleming books. And so I went over there and looked at them, and I eventually put up my stack of possibilities, and this became my definites, plus a couple others I'll get to at the end. But I'm going to go through the Ian Fleming first. But yeah, so I usually don't do a lot of book hauls, even though this one's going to come pretty close to the other one. And also, I wanted to mention that this will now be my third total book haul from the GoodWill store that I've done since, I think, January. These two are pretty close. The other one was a few months ago. And at like the beginning of each of those, I've said, wow, I usually don't find this stuff here. But obviously, if you look on YouTube, it looks like 100% of the time I find this stuff here. But look, I've been going to this place for like over 10 years, 10 or 15 years. And I haven't, maybe some of this stuff I didn't know to look for, or I just kind of hurried through or something. But you did not find this type of stuff regularly. So I've really gotten lucky this year at this store with a lot of what they've had come in as donations. I said, I'm sure if you just look at my 3 book hauls now, it looks like I'm lying through my teeth, but I promise. They usually, in the previous 10 or 15 years, they have not had this type of stuff, but here recently, they've been spot on. I'm going to start with the Ian Fleming books, and I'm actually going to start down here first. I did pick up, there are 2 not James Bond Ian Fleming books. There's this Thrilling Cities, and so at one point, so this is nonfiction. At one point, he, I don't remember what magazine or what publisher it was, but they actually paid Ian Fleming to go on like this around the world trip and spend a few days in a handful of cities and write about them. He just wrote They're like 20 pages a piece. The first one is Hong Kong. I read that, and it was pretty cool. And it's, I'll read this. Join the creator of James Bond on an adventure-charged visit to the world's most exciting, exotic, and sinful cities. Ian Fleming, Thrilling Cities. And so, like I said, he goes to these exotic places that James Bond might go to, and in many of them James Bond has been to. And he kind of just writes, but he even gives, like in the Hong Kong, he gives tips on like restaurants and where to go and what hotels to stay in and stuff like that, and it was pretty cool. And the other one is, someone wrote all over the front of it, but it's The Diamond Smugglers. And I haven't read this, but if I understand this correctly, at first I thought this was just like a crime novel or something, but I believe that I saw something online that said this was nonfiction. I haven't read this yet, and before seeing this, I had never heard of it. So if you know, please let me know below if you've read that or know much about that. I did get the 2 collections, short stories / novella collections, Octopussy and For Your Eyes Only. And I have read one of these. It's Rizzico, let me see. 109, I'll show that. Yep. Rizzico. And this deals with drug smuggling, and it was a pretty good, just quick, basic crime thriller story. I really enjoyed it a lot. And next up will be the James Bond novels. I don't have them in order, and so also you'll notice some people might cringe at this. Like there's like non-matching editions and publishers. Now they did not have, like, many of these titles had 2 or 3 copies of various editions as well, but there was not one to come away with all of one edition. I might have been able to get it within 2 editions. So I'll go through. I did try, one thing I tried to do was, where I could, first and foremost, was to get ones that were like not falling apart, but also I wanted to get the ones without the movie covers, like without the actual James Bond on the cover, with actual artwork. And some of them I did, some of them I didn't. This is the Man with the Golden Gun. This one's in a little bit rougher shape. This is You Only Live Twice, right? Yep, You Only Live Twice. That's a pretty cool cover, actually. I believe, yeah, this is Signet. I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is the same publisher as the other 2 non-James Bond books that I had. No, this one's a Dale, but the paper feels the same. Then, alright, so this is a movie cover. It's On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, I have read this one before, and I enjoyed it. This is one of the, it's not one of my favorite movies. I don't think they did George Lazenby really any favors. They definitely could have helped him out a lot more, but this is a really good novel. I have not read all of the James Bond novels, but I've read a handful of them. Now, this was the only copy of Thunderball, and you see it's jacked up, but I said this was the only copy of this one that they had. And next up is what I think is one of the best movies before of James Bond, but I've never read the book, and that is From Russia with Love. See, this one's in kind of rough shape. I don't know. I think the other one was in much rougher shape. All right, we do have another like movie tie-in cover. You see it says Roger Moore as James Bond. So Live and Let Die. Now this one's in great shape. Now this this might be one of my favorite covers. I do like bright yellow covers, but I don't know when this looks like a newer one. I don't want to spend forever reading this, but it looks like this one came out in '87. That's Goldfinger. Now I've not read this one either. This is one of the best movies in my opinion, but I've heard that the novel is actually one of the worst ones. So if you've read the Goldfinger novel, let me know what you think about it. And then I do have, this is a newer one. Yeah, you can see it. But although this is Casino Royale. You can see it says now a new motion picture. Now, about the time that the Casino Royale movie came out, or whenever they did this cover, they actually did a full run of all of the James Bond books with similar covers, and I do think it looks cool. This was, the Casino Royale was the only title with a cover like this, or I probably would have gotten more. I like this a good bit. So that is all the Ian Fleming that I got. I'm going to go ahead and go through real quick. I have a couple other. Now these were books that I already had, but they go with these. These are other James Bond books that I already owned. And this is a modern Moonraker. So as far as I know, the current run of trade paperbacks looks something similar to this. Moonraker is very good. It's definitely one of the best novels I've read out of the ones that I have read. I see, if you look at like the Ian Fleming James Bond novels ranked, a lot of times Moonraker's toward the top, and it's really good. Like I said, I haven't read enough to know that. And this is the other James Bond I've got, and it was actually written by John Gardner. This is one of the older continuation novels. I believe John Gardner. I might have said James. I believe John Gardner wrote a handful of them, and they seem to be pretty widely regarded in like the James Bond collector world for special services. I read this while I was a teenager. This was actually my dad's book years ago, and I stole it. And I don't remember that much about the plot. Yeah, this says this is a 1983 printing. It's not a first edition of that, but it was pretty good too. So that I was going to show those two off because this is my complete Ian Fleming / James Bond collection now. It was 2 before a week ago. Now I had the titles, but I forgot them. There are 3 books that were not there, or that I still do not own, even with all that. Now I got 2 more books on my as the book haul, and these are both by one of my favorite writers that I've mentioned before, Ernest Hemingway. I've got Green Hills of Africa, and I picked up a copy of A Farewell to Arms. Now, I read Green Hills of Africa a long time ago. I went ahead and read the first chapter when I picked it up. I did not own a copy, and I really like the cover. I really like how it looks. And like I said, I didn't own one, so I picked that up. Now, I thought I did not own a copy of A Farewell to Arms because I don't particularly even like this copy. It was just the only one there. Now, I was remembering, I actually showed this in an earlier book haul, picking this up from actually the GoodWill. And now, if you've read a lot of Hemingway or you're familiar with his works, he has really 4 longer works that are really important, that kind of stand above the rest. And then he has a lot of his short stories are really good. And this actually collects a good bit of his short stories, and then 3 of his important longer works. For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fiesta, which is also known as The Sun Also Rises, and The Old Man and the Sea. And this does not have A Farewell to Arms. For some reason, it does have Across the River and Into the Trees, which is not one of his best at all. So I'm not sure what was up with like the licensing or whatever to add A Farewell to Arms. I'm not sure when this came out. I do know that A Farewell to Arms was one of the first like Penguin Modern Classics, or I'm not sure what it was called back then. I don't know. So yeah, but it does not have A Farewell to Arms, and for whatever reason I was thinking I didn't have one, but I actually had a copy before I even bought that. I had this. Now this is at least at the time that I bought this, maybe 10 years ago, this was like what the cover of the trade paperbacks looked like. Let's see. Oh, where are we at? See, here's Island in the Streams. They have very similar cover design. The same with The Old Man and the Sea and To Have and Have Not. Now those are the only ones I have with that cover design. I don't particularly like the cover design, but so I did have a copy, so I bought this for no reason. It was $2. And I didn't know this either. The lady at the checkout counter told me that apparently they have different color price tags, and every day they have like a special color that's half off. So about 2/3, the day I went it was green. About 2/3 of my James Bond novels were only $1, and had I known, I would have gotten different editions to make it more, to have more of them be only $1. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this book haul, and it's hopefully my last book haul for a little while, because like I said, I don't have a boatload of space, and I'm not just constantly buying. I do like to buy stuff that I really like and that I want to keep, or that I really want to read. And so I didn't want to give a false impression by doing a book haul so soon, but that's what it ended up being. And if I go back in there in a week and there's something awesome, I will pick it up. I'm not going to let it pass by just because I just did a book haul. So that'll wrap this book haul up. Thank you for watching. If you're still here, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can check out my Substack for short, free horror stories. I'll put the link down below. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.